Hi, I'm Natalie Shurtleff. I'm the Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach for AARP Connecticut. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP Connecticut, a biweekly interview series on the issues important to people 50 plus in Connecticut and their families. Today, AARP volunteer Reggie and I welcome Senator Matt Lesser, who represents Connecticut's 9th Senate District. Before we get into our questions with Senator Lesser, I'd like to give Reggie a chance to say a few words about herself and her role as a volunteer with AARP. Welcome, Reggie.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, Senator. I'm a senior, I'm disabled, and I'm a veteran. I came to AARP as a victim of elder financial exploitation by a caregiver. Because of that experience, I am now a member of AARP's Fraud Watch Network. That's a group of trained volunteers who go out and make presentations to the community on a variety of scams and other issues that are taking advantage of our residents.
Thank you, Reggie, for all you do. And Senator Lesser, I know you've joined us before, so welcome back. Before we dive into today's topic, would you remind our viewers a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, thank you, Natalie. And it's so great to be once again with AARP. Before I answer that, I just want to say it's such a delight to see my constituent, Reggie. She has been a wonderful presence up at the Capitol, advocating for seniors in a variety of different ways, and really is a force of nature. So it's good to see you. Glad you're doing well. And thank you so much for gracing us with your presence this morning. I am representing the 9th District, which is the towns of Middletown, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, Newington, and part of Wethersfield. I serve on a whole bunch of different committees, but the one I'm most proudest of is I'm the co-chair of the Human Services Committee, which oversees Connecticut Social Safety Net, and importantly, that has oversight over the Department of Aging and Disability Services, as well as nursing homes and other vital programs funded by the Connecticut Department of Social Services. So I spend a lot of time focusing on issues important to older adults in our communities. And I can't think of a better partner in that than AARP. We work together on 1,000 different things.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'll also just add, I happen to live in Middletown, father of two, and I love all the towns though that I represent. It's really the honor of my life.
Congratulations, Senator, and thank you. We know that you're very passionate about making prescription drugs more affordable to the residents of Connecticut. Can you tell us about what policies or actions you hope to support during the upcoming legislative session?
Yeah, this is one of the things that seems to be annoying people of all political parties right now, is that Americans have a lot of prescription drug companies here, and that's great. They innovate a lot, and we want new cures and affordable cures. The problem is that although we have the same drugs available in drugstores here as anywhere else in the world, we pay vastly more for prescription drugs than anybody else on the planet. And as a result, if you're a senior in Connecticut, you're subsidizing consumers all over the world. We're paying more so that other people pay less. That's not right. People are paying an astronomical amount for prescription drugs, and we have to do something about it. Now, the good news on the federal level is that Biden-Harris administration, through the Inflation Reduction Act, has for the first time capped out-of-pocket costs for folks on Medicare, has capped insulin costs, which is something we did in Connecticut a few years ago, and is for the first time using the power of Medicare to negotiate the price of prescription drugs. And that's great. But for people who aren't on Medicare, prescription drug costs are still unaffordable. And they're still not quite affordable enough for people who are on Medicare. So I think there's a lot that Connecticut can do to bend the cost curve, to bring prices down. That would save taxpayers a ton of money. And it would mean that we're saving every family money every month as they're doing their bills. So there are a lot of policies I'd like to put on the table that would make a difference here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot that we can do here. We know that prescription drugs are just far too expensive, unaffordable for people, especially for those that are on a fixed income. So thank you for everything that you've been doing to help make prescription drugs more affordable. So I know one of the things that you've supported is a prescription drug advisory board. But I think some of our viewers may not quite be familiar with what a prescription drug advisory board is. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role that they can play in lowering the cost of prescription drugs?
Yeah, and this is something that other states have done. It's setting up these boards. It's a fancy title, but what it really is about is negotiating the price of prescription drugs and saying that we want to use leverage our buying power as a state to try to bring down the price of drugs on in critical areas where you've seen drug prices go up year after year, and it's breaking the back of everybody who's trying to pay for prescription drug costs. So we would simply try to put together all of the purchasers. So that means insurance companies and the government to just say, if you want to sell a prescription drug in Connecticut, we're going to try to use all of our buying power, put it together, and negotiate the price with the drug company. If we do that, we could save a lot of money and potentially piggyback off of those new lower Medicare prices that President Biden and Vice President Harris have negotiated on the federal level. And if it's good enough for Medicare, and I think it is, we should pass it on to everyone in Connecticut as well.
Thank you.
The other thing I would just say that we could potentially do, because Connecticut has a lot of buying power if we all work together, but we could also potentially partner with another state and get together with a New York, a Massachusetts, a California, Colorado, and potentially put our buying power together. And that would get us extra leverage to bring down those high drug costs.
Thank you. During the legislative session, many AARP folks, volunteers, including myself, show up at the legislative office building and the Capitol in Hartford wearing our red shirts to advocate on important issues. What can you tell our listeners about how they can make their voices heard on this and other issues?
One, AARP is a great place to volunteer, to show up. You have an outsized impact on the public policy process, and are fighting for electric ratepayers and for consumers, and have been an important ally in a whole bunch of consumer issues. So AARP is a great organization, and certainly encourage people to do that. Whether you're volunteering with AARP or some other way, look, I think that people think that elected officials are out of reach, that you may have heard about your elected official, but a lot of people don't ever think to actually give us a call, or even better, just show up at the state capitol during the legislative session and set up a meeting. So I think the most important thing to do, and Reggie, you found this because I know you have, just reach out to your elected official and ask for a meeting. If there's something that you care about, reach out, talk to them. Then if they don't listen, then you got to get creative. But a whole lot can be done just simply by having a conversation with your elected official, and some of that's in person.
And they're very receptive to meeting with you as well. So I've enjoyed my interaction with you. So, Senator, is there any other thing that we didn't cover that you would like to share with our viewers? Well,
there just on prescription drugs, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we're trying to do. So one is bringing in, we found that the same drugs that we pay a ton of money for in Connecticut are available for a fraction of the price in Canada. There are often American drugs that we've exported to Canada, but if you go right over the border, you drive up Interstate 91 and you go across the Canadian border, you will find the same drugs available for a fraction of the price. So can Connecticut do what Florida has just recently done, which is gotten federal approval to re-import, to take those drugs back from Canada we've already sent there as a way of, putting more pressure on the drug companies to lower their prices. Love to do that. We've already, as I mentioned, done a lot to make insulin affordable in Connecticut. I wrote a law a few years ago capping the price of prescription drugs at $25 a month if you are on a state-regulated plan. Not everybody is. And we can do more to bring down the price of insulin as well. And we're also seeing issues in some cases of drug shortages where hospitals are having trouble accessing critical drugs. And so can we work with generic drug manufacturers to make sure that there are adequate supplies of generic drugs? In addition to some drugs being too expensive, other drugs are too cheap. And that's a weird problem. It doesn't really, usually don't people get upset about cheap drugs, but sometimes when a drug is too cheap, generic drug manufacturers decide they can't make the money off of it, and so we have drug shortages. So on both ends, we got to make sure that we're serving people, making sure that we're ensuring that if you're sick in the state, you can get the medicine that you need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, is making sure that everyone in Connecticut has access to the medications that they need at a price that they can afford. So thank you for everything you've done. And I know we'll continue working together to make prescription drugs more accessible and affordable for Connecticut residents this year. Any closing thoughts, Senator Lesser?
No, excited to continue to work with AARP. If I'm again the chair of the Human Services Committee, from nursing homes to the elderly nutrition programs, we're talking about Meals on Wheels and congregate living. We got a lot of work to do to make sure that we're taking care of folks in our communities, working with AARP to represent the interests of older adults. And you've been a wonderful partner, and I think we got a lot of work ahead of us.
We definitely do. There's a lot we can get done, but there's a lot that we've already done together. So thank you for that. Thank you again, Reggie, for joining us today. Always great to have a constituent talking with their legislator. And thank you to all of our listeners for watching us today and tuning into another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP Connecticut. Join us again in 2 weeks for another episode, and catch back episodes on demand right here on our Facebook page or on YouTube. So scan this QR code to become an e-advocate and help us advance policies important to the 50+ in Connecticut. Thank you again.